Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Today is what they call Saturday. It is a Sabbath day. It is May the 30th, and the children of Israel are rising up in the streets. They are lifting up a shout against their enemies. We are lifting up a shout against our enemies. So first, I would like to title today's segment, Sitting at the Table of Our Enemies. Once again, I'd like to title today's segment, Sitting at the Table of Our Enemies. Once again, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. What we're faced with currently is the separation between the enemy within and the enemy without. And I will do a video specifically addressing those two aspects of our enemies, those within and those without. Currently, I'm going to do this short piece will be on those that are within. Many of our enemies are sitting at our enemy's table. And I'm speaking of those who are of our people that sit at the table of our enemies. Anytime we see one of our people sitting at the table of our enemies, we must know for sure that he is an enemy unto us as well. Let me repeat that. Whenever you see a man or woman of Israel, when one of our people are sitting at the table of our enemies, we must understand clearly that they are also enemies unto us. It is very clear that many of our people, in order to seek position and power, will sell our people up the river. They are compensated for what they do and what they say. And most of it is to guide and direct our people in a specific way to go. And usually that way is no good. When we're dealing with the enemy within that's sitting at the table of our enemies, we must understand clearly when our enemy allows one of us to sit at his table in any form of roles, CEO, manager, HR manager, any of these high positions within these conglomerates. Once you see one of us in one of these roles, you must understand clearly that if he is able to sit at the table, he or she, and that includes the politicians, that includes the preachers, and that includes the police. Those three P's are in this as well. When they are in these high positions, sitting at the table of their enemies, we must understand clearly that the enemy that vetted them, and they will vet them carefully, understands clearly that that individual will not poison the food. Let me say that again. When we see those of our people sitting at the table of our enemies, holding any position of importance, police, politicians, pastors, CEOs, managers, and things of the like, we must understand clearly that our enemies have vetted them carefully. And they were selected for that position because it is clear that they will not poison the food. Now, what is the food? That could mean the literal food. If they were eating at a table and one of us is sitting there, that man is confident that if he turns his face, that something wouldn't be poured in his drink or his food. That's the literal part. Now, as a whole, the ideology and the goals of our enemies must be adhered to in order for you to be in that position. So therefore, two cannot walk together lest they be agreed. So once you see one of our men or our women speaking on the behalf of our enemies, in conjunction with them, running with them, participating with them, sitting and eating and laughing and joking with them, we must understand that that individual means us absolutely no good. And they are aware of that. What is happening currently is that our people, The Most High is putting a spirit upon our people that we're beginning to understand clearly who our enemies are. And that doesn't bode well for the enemy that is within. Your college professors, your academics. These men and women pay a substantial amount of money to go to a school of quote-unquote higher learning, which is an indoctrination of the Europeans' way of thinking and doing things. And if that man is smart to any degree, the smartest, the best and brightest of us, they are separated from the rest of us. And our people, like most people, will go to the highest bidder, him who pays the highest or pays the most. So those of us who are deemed to be intelligent, bright, and academics have been fooled. They have been indoctrinated into the ways of their enemies, and they fight the battle of their enemies against their own people. Some will do it unknowingly. Others will do it knowing full well that they are traitors unto their own people. However, the damage has been done, and so much so, they have no choice but to continue forward, because to have a change of heart and to separate themselves from their enemies, they would lose their money, they would lose their tenure, they would lose their position of influence and possibly affluence in the midst of their enemies, and they would be forced to return back onto their own people. That doesn't bode well for them, because once you return back onto our people and you have been deemed a traitor unto us, you have no place to go. You're stuck between your people and your enemies, and you will not be accepted by either side. You're in no man's land at that point. So what we're seeing now is the children of Israel rising up. They're becoming fed up. We're turning to the Most High. We're lifting our hands in prayer. We're not calling upon the European deity called JC, because the Most High has given us wisdom to understand that this is an error. And as we raise up and rise up and face Jerusalem and lift our hands in prayer, the Most High is going to start moving on the behalf of his people. And there's nothing that our enemies can do to stop this. What we're seeing is the beginning of the end of wickedness. That's what you're seeing. The uprising of the righteous. Though many of us right now are not aware that we are Israel, many of us right now are not turning and facing Jerusalem. However, there's enough of us doing it right now for the Most High to make a move on the behalf of the sons and daughters of Jacob. So, men of Zion, we have been cowards. We have fought battles against our enemies, and we have lost. And we have lost because we have not put the Most High before us when we took on our enemies. However, the time is different now. So we are aware of who our strength is. We understand clearly how to pray. And so therefore, as we face our enemies in this time, if we keep the Most High before us and we walk within his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, there is no way possible that we will lose. So we must understand this as we go before our enemies in this critical juncture, that we are to walk within the commandments of the Most High while doing so. For we cannot get justice if we ourselves are unjust. We cannot get righteousness if we ourselves are unrighteous. So if we are to be righteous men and women and holy people, as we are commanded to be by the Most High, walk within his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, we will rise up against our enemies throughout the entire earth. And there's nothing they can do to stop it, because they do not know the Most High. They are full of wickedness. They teach that there is no law, and hence this is why you see the lawlessness of them. So, be mindful of those who are sitting in these high positions, those who are sitting at the table of our enemies. They are enemies unto us also, and we will uproot them out just like we have in times past. And we will deal with our enemies as we have in times past. We're seeing the killings of our sons and our daughters in the street. These killings of blatant murder. The commandment for murder is death. Let me say that again. The commandment for a murderer is death. There's no way one of our sons should be killed and that man be allowed to walk alive. Shouldn't happen. I don't care who he is. However, for us to do this, we must first clean up some things in the midst of ourselves. We ought to return to the Most High's laws. If we understand clearly in the midst of each other that, brother, I care for you, I love you, and you are a son of the Most High, and I respect you as such, and I understand that we are a family, and we are a nation in the midst of our enemies, then I will not seek to do you harm. I will not kill you. So therefore, once I have that respect for you, for your life, and we are in one accord under the Most High's umbrella, his law, then therefore, if anyone touches you, we all rise up against him. And that eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is exactly how we operate in the house of Israel. And that's exactly how we should operate. However, what we cannot do, we cannot allow a man of Israel in the midst of us to murder one of our sons. We have looked through the window and we saw him kill one of our sons. And then when the investigation is being done, 10 of us saw this man murder one of our sons. And when the investigation begins, we all claim that we didn't see anything. So we cannot allow the murdering of our sons in the midst of ourselves. When one of our sons killed one of our sons, he should be held accountable. And if it's murder, the punishment for that is death. And we're supposed to do that. So if we're going to ask for justice, we've got to be willing to swing the gavel of justice. So we should not allow at all when one of our sons kill one of our sons. He should think clearly before he kills another man of Israel. If I do this, my house, my father, my brother, my uncles, and all of my people will rise up against me, and I will be killed should I kill this man of Israel. He will think of that first, and he will stand down. So now we have to start enforcing this righteous judgment in the midst of ourselves. Once we put the value of our own lives in the midst of ourselves, it will carry 10 times the weight outside of our nation, because we will not tolerate it in the midst of our own people, and we certainly not going to tolerate you killing our sons. So we're not going to accept it either way. We won't accept it in the midst of our own houses and in the places where we live, and we're certainly not going to allow a stranger to do it. However, we cannot be duplicitous. We cannot be hypocritical. We cannot turn a blind eye when one of our sons kills one of our sons, and then when one of our enemies kills one of our sons, we figure we want to uprise. The Most High will not support such a thing. It will not be done. This is hypocrisy, and it cannot be done, and the Most High will not be before you should you be duplicitous as it pertains to his law. And if we are to be duplicitous, and we're to turn our eyes once we see injustice and unrighteousness, then the Most High will turn his face away from us. And it's really that simple. So as we do this in the midst of ourselves, once our enemies decide to do harm to one of our sons, we will do harm to him. These individuals that's killing our sons, and they're being charged, that is not even a consolation prize to us. They have been arrested in times past, and then they're released in times past, and running around free in times past. We don't want an arrest, and we shouldn't want a check. The Most High did not say our redemption involved a check from our enemies. So our enemies cannot give us that which the Most High has not promised. So we must understand this. When you kill one of our sons, our commandment is, if you commit murder, that the individual that did that must die. And we're going to have to enforce that. And it's the only way. A check won't do. It doesn't bring our sons back. They can print this money up from here to the ceiling. It has no value to them. It has no value to us as it pertains to our sons. It is a disgusting thing for any man to have his son killed and for him to do nothing. That is your seed. Any woman that lays down with a man and has a child with him, and that child is murdered by our enemies or by an enemy within, by another Israelite, and that man doesn't do anything to defend the honor of his dead seed, that man isn't worth his salt. And if that man decides to go in the back and take a check, that woman should divorce him immediately. This is the cowardice that we have in the midst of our people. Men who are not willing to fight to defend their own seed. So these are the things that we have to clean up. Not only are they willing, they're not willing to defend for their own seed and ensure that justice is done for the killing of their sons. Many of these men, once they have a son or a daughter, will not bear the responsibility of raising and guiding them. So if they don't care about them in that regard, you should not be shocked when their sons or their daughters are killed and these men will do nothing. They're going to go march, or they're going to back and take a check and be silent. This is the spirit of cowards. And that is why we are in the position that we're in. Because the Most High has removed his spirit from us. We have a spirit of fear upon us. We are cowards. We do not walk within his law. Therefore, there's no strength in us in which to confront and face our enemies. Now, this is how we have to approach this as it pertains to the killing of our sons and daughters, whether it be in the streets or whether it be in the midst of us. If you have ever looked at any of these National Geographic shows, you'll see at the water hole, you may see many large crocodiles, and you see a couple of baby hippos, and you see the big hippos. Now, you will see that baby hippo, who is no bigger than the size of a small dog, at a very young age, will walk over to the biggest crocodile and just use his snout and kind of bump that crocodile as if to say, hey, get out the way. Now that big, huge crocodile is an adult. That hippo is a child, small hippo. That huge crocodile knows, I will bite you and snap you in half right now. The crocodile knows that he has the power to do this. The hippopotamus, at that time, he's young. He doesn't know what his strength really is. But he's doing what he has seen his parents do. So he bumps the crocodile one more time. The crocodile still didn't move. The crocodile is thinking, you know, I'd bite you and snap you in half. But then the crocodile is mindful that there's an adult hippo, that parent is standing right there in the presence of the whole situation. And that adult crocodile knows, though I have the power to bite and snap this baby hippo in half, he knows should he do that, he will be dead in 30 seconds or less. He knows the punishment for that action will be his death. And not only that, that hippo may get angry enough to kill some other crocodiles as well, just to make an example of them. So the next time, before that baby hippo can bump that crocodile or that alligator, whatever it may be, before he can hit him a third time, that big crocodile will simply just jump in that water and swim away, because he understands clearly that though he has the ability to harm that baby hippo, he understands should he do that, it will result in his death. And that has to be the mindset of our people against our enemies and against the enemy that is within, that chooses to harm our sons and daughters, though they look like us. That way, when the policeman pulls over one of our sons, i.e. a Trayvon Martin, pull him over or corners him or anything of the sort, you have a grown man versus a child. We have to get in the mindset of our enemies the same concept of this crocodile and this baby hippo. Though that cop may be a grown man and our son may be 15 or 16 years old, that cop needs to think to himself, yes, I'm a grown man and this is a child. And I have the ability and the power to kill him. But if I make this mistake and kill him, I understand there'll be 100,000 Israelites at my house. And I won't live past an hour from now, nor anyone in my house. And if that's the precedent that we send, then clearly he will stand down. Because regardless of how they think and act, they're not willing to die. And this must be the precedent that we set when it pertains to our lives. Is that when you do such a thing, our entire nation will rise up against you. And you will pay for murder with your life. And that has to be the stance that we take. We will not have this strength and this spirit if we're walking outside the confines of the Most High's law. When Lot was taken, Abraham went and got him with 300 men of his house armed to get him. When Goliath spoke noise against the Most High and against the children of Israel, Governor David removed his head from his neck. I want you guys to understand exactly. I want all of you of the children to understand, of the children of Israel to understand clearly. Our way in times past have never been cowardice. We've never prayed for our enemies. When our governor David prayed for our enemies was for the destruction. So this is where we are to be. We're not to hug our enemies. We're certainly not to pray for them. We are to pray that the Most High take their ways and bring it upon their own head to destroy them. It is simple as that. So this is the time where we must change our mindset. We must understand who we are as a people. We are holy people in the midst of unholy and unrighteous people. And some of our people have chosen to be unholy and unrighteous and walk lockstep with our enemies. And we must root them out. This will not be possible unless we walk in the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. We're rising up in the many cities right now, and we're burning down everything. The only language that our enemies understand is violence. So when we act in this manner, this they understand. But we are burning down things that are of no value. They can be rebuilt. They can get loans. They can print up money and rebuild these buildings and these cities, most of which are covered by insurance. Our sons cannot be brought back to life. So therefore, it is an uneven exchange. For you to kill any of our children, any of our seed, for you to remove them from the earth, and for us to burn a building. You can replace the building. We cannot replace our sons. So we must start looking at equitable punishment, equitable value. You kill one of our sons, we kill that murderer that has done that to our sons. And we will make an example of him. And we will raise up every man in Israel against anyone that comes against the house of Israel and against our seed. And until we are strong enough to do that and to stand up on the behalf of our nation, on the behalf of our seed, we are not worth our salt as men. We have to make it clear to our enemies, those within and those without, that the killing of any of our sons or daughters is unacceptable. And we have the power to administer punishment. The question now remains to be seen: are you willing to carry out that righteous judgment when someone has dealt unrighteously with you, your house, or of the children of Israel? Many of us, when one of our sons are killed, we do not pay it any mind. For the most part, there's a hate in the midst of the house of Israel. Well, I don't like him anyway. He's dead. He's not in my city. I don't know who he is. We make all types of excuse to distance ourselves when one of our brothers dies. What we must be aware of is that which is outside the street will come into your house. So when you see them killing the children of Israel in another state, understand it's going to come to your state. So you might as well be geared for it and be ready for it now and speak against it. That which we have seen in other lands is coming to America full force. All the evil that has been done in these other nations is coming here. And you have to be ready for it. Like I've done the video, the 3 Ps. The politician, the preacher, and the police. They're dangerous. The uprising of our people is going to be everywhere, not just here. So as we continue to pray and face Jerusalem and lift our voice up in prayer, the Most High is going to act. We're seeing what's going on now in the midst of this place pertaining to the pandemic. It's a plague by the Most High. We're seeing a separation, the great divide of the people. So everything is beginning to fragment. It's beginning to break, including the finances, the job opportunities, the sports. And let me address this. As far as sports and employment, the area or the environment of the workplace is an artificial workplace. We are forced to work together with our enemies, those who mean us absolutely no good. Their parents meant us no good, and they mean our children and ourselves no good. We are forced to work with them in an environment. We were brought to these many nations to do the rigor, to do the hard work and the labor. When there is no work, because the Most High has stripped this man of the ability to employ us, we have to decide what's next when there's no work to be provided, when there's no work to be done. Next, sports. There are no professional sports being played right now. We must understand that the sports complexes, if weren't for sports and for employment, 2 forced and artificial environments, we would not have any dealings with our enemies, and they would have no dealings with us. Think of the average person that is not of our nation. And if you know them because you played sports or associated with some form of sport with them, or you work with them. Maybe the military, your current workplace, or some type of sports team. Beyond that, we have no common interest with our enemies. We may pretend to have it, but there isn't. At the end of the workday, you go to your house, he goes to his house. You go in the voting booth, he goes to the left, you go to the right, etc. In days of worship, he goes to his worship house, you go to your idol house. We are 2 separate peoples. There's a reason why every nation was allotted a specific land in a specific area, because you were to dwell with your own people. What we have here is an artificial creation of many people of many different nations faking the funk on a daily basis to make something that's artificial work. Now we have to ask ourselves, how long will this facade last. So here we are. We're seeing the cracks of the country fall apart. We're seeing our people rise up asking for justice. And if we do this in righteousness, there is absolutely nothing that they can do to stop it. So let's go ahead and continue to turn to the Most High. Let's separate ourselves from wickedness. Let's have a clear understanding of who our enemies are. And many of our enemies are right next to us. Some of us are in the bed with our enemies. So we must understand clearly who and what our enemies are. We are to walk in righteousness. And let's look to see if and when the Europeans who have some sense of righteousness will speak up on the behalf of righteousness and point out that what is being done and what has been done to our people is wickedness. It's evil. For if they do not recognize that and they do not turn away and speak against it, they will all be destroyed. So there will be a fraction of them and a faction of them that will acknowledge that what has been done to our people in these many lands is unjust. And those are the ones that will turn to the Most High's law. But most of them will not, because you must remember that these people will tell you there is no law. No law equals lawlessness. Hence, you're seeing lawlessness across the earth, because they operate on the premise that there is none. No law equals no God. And we know that he exists. So let's look at how this thing plays out. Let's look at how the children of Israel rise up against their enemies, and let's see what the results are. Once again, if we rise up against our enemies and we do not have the Most High before us, we will be smitten before our enemies. Our strength is the Most High. We are protected when we walk within his Torah. So this is what we must do in order to have success. Many of us are praying. I'm seeing the children of Israel at some of these channels. They're praying at, I want to say, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock, I believe. They're praying. So if you're hearing this, you can also pray at those hours and pray before that and lift your hands up and raise up a shout against our enemies, against the Most High. And let's see exactly how all of this turns out. Because right now we're seeing the destruction, the financial chaos. We're seeing the plagues. Let's see exactly what the Most High will do next. They're struggling financially. Many are out of jobs. Many have been plagued. And they have not yet to see the whirlwinds that may come this year. So let's wait and see. For the Most High is at work for his people, and he is at work against his enemies. So that concludes this segment, sitting at the table of our enemies. Anyone that's sitting at the table of our enemies is an enemy unto us. And we must be mindful of that. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Peace, Israel.